It was a blood-red dress and a smile that could freeze the sun. When Eliza Reyes stepped onto that stage, no one in the room at the opulent Manhattan Hotel could have imagined they were about to witness the most brutal, flawless act of revenge in the history of American high society. In less than 30 minutes, this cosmetics CEO would tear her millionaire fiancé apart in front of 300 witnesses, expose his mistress as a gold-digging opportunist, and turn what was supposed to be a graceful charity gala into the most talked-about spectacle of the decade. But this story didn't begin that night. It started 8 months earlier, when Michael Sterling made the biggest mistake of his life. He underestimated Eliza Reyes. And when a woman who has built a beauty empire from nothing decides to get even, she leaves nothing to chance. Nothing at all. Eliza Reyes adjusted her diamond necklace, her reflection in the penthouse mirror showing the perfect image of a 35-year-old titan of industry. As the CEO of Luminous Cosmetics, a company she'd built from the ground up, her brand was now worth $1 billion. Her light brown hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders, and her navy blue dress, a custom Chanel, highlighted every curve of her athletic figure. "Are you ready, my love?" Michael's deep voice echoed from the living room, that confident tone that had captivated the media. "In a moment, darling," Eliza replied, applying the final coat of her best-selling lipstick, Signature Red. Michael Sterling was everything a woman could ever want. Handsome, with a hotel chain spanning the country, and supposedly madly in love with her. For 3 years, he'd been the perfect fiancé. Flowers every Saturday, dinners at the most exclusive restaurants, dream trips, and a proposal that had graced the cover of every celebrity magazine. The wedding of the century, they had called it. A perfect union between two empires. Eliza smiled, remembering the headline as she walked into the living room. Michael had his back to her, speaking on the phone in a low voice. He was a tall man, his broad shoulders filling out a Hugo Boss suit, his dark hair immaculately slicked back. He was the very picture of masculine perfection. "Yes, I told you I can't tonight. I have Eliza's event," he murmured into the phone. Eliza's brow furrowed. Who was he talking to at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night? But Michael had already hung up and turned to her with that heart-melting smile. "My God, you look spectacular," he exclaimed, approaching to kiss her cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup. "Everyone at the gala is going to be so jealous." "Thanks, babe. Who was that?" she asked casually. "Oh, Johnson, the manager of the hotel in Miami. You know him. Always some minor urgency." Eliza nodded, but something in his tone didn't sound entirely convincing, yet she had no time to analyze. Her company's charity gala was tonight, and as CEO, she had to be flawless. The ride in the black Escalade to the hotel was like so many before. Michael talked about his latest hotel projects, and Eliza spoke about the launch of her new anti-aging line. The conversation flowed perfectly, as it always had between them. "By the way," Michael said as the valet took the keys, "I think Marie, your intern, is going to be at the event, right?" Eliza raised an eyebrow. "Marie? Why do you ask?" "No reason, just curious. She's very efficient at her job." Something in the way he said efficient sent a small shiver down Eliza's spine, but she chalked it up to pre-event jitters. The gala was an enormous success. The ballroom was stunning, decorated with white flowers and golden lights. More than 300 guests, including CEOs, celebrities, and politicians, mingled in an atmosphere of elegance. Eliza glided through the crowd, smiling for the cameras, thanking people for donations to her foundation for female entrepreneurs, and discussing business strategies. She was in her element. Michael, for his part, played his role as the perfect fiancé, attentive but not smothering, proud but not stealing her spotlight, charming to every guest. Eliza saw him several times, talking animatedly with potential investors, always discreetly promoting both of their businesses. "Eliza, what an incredible event!" exclaimed a magazine editor, approaching with a photographer. "Can we get some photos of the golden couple?" Eliza smiled radiantly and posed next to Michael, who wrapped his arm around her waist. The camera flashes captured what seemed to be a moment of perfect happiness. "Tell us, Michael," the editor continued, "what's it like to be engaged to the most successful woman in America?" "It's a privilege," he replied with that perfect smile. "Eliza isn't just beautiful, she's brilliant. I learn something new from her every day. I can't wait for her to be my wife." The words were perfect, rehearsed. Eliza felt an odd pang in her gut, but quickly dismissed it. At 10 p.m., Eliza took the stage to give her thank you speech. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. "Good evening, everyone. When I founded Luminous Cosmetics 10 years ago, I never imagined we'd come this far." As she spoke, Eliza scanned the crowd. She saw Michael in the front row, applauding proudly. She saw her employees, her investors, her friends, and then, in a corner of the room, she saw her. Marie Delgado, 22 years old, with bleach blonde hair and a designer red dress that was definitely not within an intern's budget. And what was even stranger, she was wearing diamond earrings that Eliza recognized immediately. She had seen them at Tiffany & Co. just last week. They cost more than $50,000. How could an intern afford such expensive jewelry? Eliza finished her speech on autopilot, her mind now completely fixated on the girl in the red dress. When she stepped off the stage, Michael was waiting with a glass of champagne. "You were incredible, babe, as always." "Thanks. Hey, did you see Marie? She's over there in the corner." Michael followed her gaze, and Eliza noticed something she had never seen before. His pupils dilated slightly, and for a split second, he lost his perfect composure. "Oh yeah, she looks good," he mumbled, sipping his champagne a little too quickly. "Too good, I'd say. That dress and those jewels are not exactly intern level." "Maybe she has a wealthy family," Michael replied, but his voice sounded strained. The rest of the night passed in a strange haze for Eliza. She continued to smile, chat, and pose for photos, but her mind couldn't stop thinking about Marie, the diamond earrings, and Michael's reaction. When they finally got home at 2 a.m., Eliza was exhausted, but her mind was racing. "That was a perfect event, my love," Michael said, loosening his tie. "You raised a fortune for the foundation." "Yeah, it was good." Michael came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her, kissing her neck. "I'm so proud of you. You're amazing." Normally, Eliza would have melted at those words, but tonight, something had shifted. A tiny seed of doubt had sprouted in her mind, and no matter how much she tried to ignore it, it kept growing. "Michael," she said, turning in his arms, "is there something I should know?" He looked at her with those chocolate-brown eyes that had won her over 3 years ago. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. Lately you feel distant." Michael laughed and kissed her forehead. "You're just being paranoid, my love. It must be wedding stress. I'm right here with you, as always." Eliza nodded, wanting to believe him. But as she got ready for bed, she couldn't help but notice that Michael was checking his phone more often than usual, and when a message came in at 3 a.m., he read it immediately and then deleted the conversation. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep, and without knowing it, she had just taken the first step toward a discovery that would change her life forever. The following days passed with an apparent sense of normalcy, but Eliza couldn't get the image of Marie at that gala out of her head. During her Monday morning meeting, she studied the young intern. Marie was undoubtedly beautiful, tall, slender, with that fresh beauty that only 20-somethings possess. But beyond her looks, Eliza noticed something she had previously ignored: the confidence with which she moved through the office, as if she knew something others didn't. "Marie, could you stay for a moment after the meeting?" Eliza asked. The young woman nodded with a smile that Eliza now found slightly smug. Once they were alone in Eliza's office, the CEO decided to ask some casual questions. "I saw you at the gala on Thursday. You looked very elegant." "Thank you, Ms. Reyes. It was an amazing event." "That dress was beautiful. Where did you get it?" Marie hesitated for a split second. "It was a gift." "How lucky. From whom?" From my boyfriend." Eliza felt as though she'd been punched in the stomach but kept her smile. "I didn't know you had a boyfriend. What does he do?" "He's in business." "How interesting. In what sector?" Marie was visibly nervous. "Hotels." Eliza's world was shaking, but years of experience in the business world had taught her to maintain composure under pressure. "What a coincidence. My fiancé is also in hotels. Maybe they know each other." "What's his name?" Marie's eyes filled with panic. "Oh, I prefer to keep my private life separate from work, if you don't mind." "Of course." Eliza's smile was a serpent's hiss. "I understand completely." That afternoon, Eliza cancelled all her meetings and dedicated herself to observation. She noticed how Marie constantly checked her phone, how she smiled a special way when she received certain messages, how she frequently excused herself to take important personal calls. At 6 p.m., Eliza made a decision that would change everything. She followed Marie. The young woman left the building and walked toward the parking garage, where a black Escalade waited for her. Eliza's breath hitched as she recognized the car. It was identical to Michael's. The same model, the same color. From her own car, Eliza watched as Marie got into the Escalade. She couldn't see the driver from her angle, but as the car passed her to leave the garage, her heart stopped. It was Michael. Her Michael. Her perfect fiancé. Her future husband. The man who supposedly loved her more than anything in the world was picking up her intern as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Eliza sat in her car for several minutes, trying to process what she had just seen. A part of her wanted to follow the Escalade, but another part knew she wasn't ready to face what she might find. Instead, she drove home, her hands trembling and her mind a complete blank. Michael arrived at 9 p.m., as usual. "Hey, my love, how was your day?" he asked, kissing her on the cheek with the same naturalness as always. "Fine. How was yours?" "The usual. Meetings, project reviews, nothing exciting." Eliza studied him carefully. There wasn't a hint of guilt on his face or nervousness in his voice. He was a master liar. "What time did you finish work?" "Around 8. "Why?" One lie after another. Eliza felt sick to her stomach. "Just curious." That night, while Michael was showering, Eliza checked his phone. It had a password, something it had never had before. When she'd mentioned it, he'd laughed. "It's for security, babe. You know how things are with corporate privacy." Lie after lie after lie. The next 3 days were pure torture. Eliza acted normal during the day, but at night she was consumed with analyzing every detail, every gesture, every word from Michael. How long had he been cheating on her? How had she been so blind? On Thursday morning, Eliza made another decision. She hired a private investigator. Robert Jackson had been recommended by her lawyer as the best in infidelity cases. He was a discreet and efficient man in his 50s. "I need you to investigate my fiancé," she told him directly in her office. Robert didn't seem surprised. "Ms. Reyes, in my experience, when someone comes here with that certainty in their voice, They're usually right about their suspicions. How much time do you need? A week for solid evidence, 2 for a full case. You have 2 weeks. In the meantime, Eliza became a consummate actress. She smiled at Michael, kissed him, talked about wedding preparations, and acted like the perfect loving fiancée. But inside, she was preparing for war. On Friday night, Michael came home with flowers. "For the most beautiful woman in America," he said with that charming smile. "What's the occasion?" "Can't I spoil my future wife?" Eliza smiled and put the flowers in water, but inside she felt disgusted. How many flowers had he also bought for Marie? "Babe," Michael said during dinner, "I have to travel next weekend to the Bahamas. Issues with the new resort." "Do you want me to come with you?" No, it's just work. It's better you stay here and rest. You seem a little stressed lately." Eliza nodded, but she was already planning. She would email Robert that night. If Michael was traveling for work, he would probably take Marie with him. And sure enough, on Monday morning, Marie didn't show up at the office. "She called in sick," her assistant informed her. Eliza smiled coldly. "What a shame. I hope she gets better soon." That afternoon, she got the first call from Robert. "Ms. Reyes, I think you're going to want to see this." Eliza met Robert at a discreet cafe downtown. The investigator had brought a brown envelope, which he placed on the table with a serious expression. "Ms. Reyes, I must warn you that what you're about to see will be very difficult to process." Eliza took a deep breath. "I'm ready." Robert opened the envelope and began to show her photographs. The first was of Michael and Marie entering a hotel in New York City together. The second, of them passionately kissing in an elevator. The third... Stop. Eliza closed her eyes and put a hand to her chest. Although she had mentally prepared herself, seeing the betrayal in pictures was devastating. "There's more," Robert continued softly. "Much more." The next photos showed Michael and Marie in various places over the last few months. Elegant restaurants, luxury stores, and even on the beach in the Bahamas that very weekend. He was supposedly away on a work trip alone. "How long?" Eliza asked, her voice trembling. "From what I could determine, at least 8 months. 8 months. While she was planning their wedding, choosing her dress and sending out invitations, he was with another woman. But that's not all," Robert continued. "I looked into their finances. Your fiancé bought Ms. Marie an apartment in downtown Miami for $2 million, also a BMW jewelry, and he pays her a monthly stipend of $30,000. Eliza felt as though she'd been hit by a baseball bat. Not only was he unfaithful, but he was spending a fortune on his mistress. With what money? Robert showed her more documents. This is where it gets interesting. Apparently, he's been diverting funds from some joint accounts he has with you. Eliza's blood turned to ice. "He's stealing from me." "Technically, since they're joint accounts, it's not theft. But he's using the money we both contributed to support his mistress." Eliza stood up from the table abruptly. "I need some air." Outside the cafe, as she took a deep breath, her phone rang. It was Michael. "Hey, my love, how are you?" The voice that once gave her butterflies now made her nauseous. "Fine. How are things in the Bahamas?" "Great. The hotel is looking spectacular. You're going to love it when you come see it." Eliza closed her eyes. At that very moment, Robert had shown her photos of Michael and Marie sunbathing on a beach in the Bahamas. "When are you coming back?" "Tomorrow night. I miss you so much." "Me too." Eliza lied. When she hung up, she realized something had changed in her. The sadness was gone, replaced by a far more powerful emotion: fury. That night, Eliza didn't sleep. She stayed up, plotting. The next day, she met with Robert again. "I need more evidence. I need recordings, videos, text messages, everything you can get." "Are you thinking of getting a divorce?" Eliza smiled for the first time in days, but it was a cold, calculating smile. "We're not married yet, but yes, I'm thinking of destroying him." For the next few days, Eliza became the perfect spy. She discreetly installed an application on Michael's laptop that allowed her to access his messages. What she found enraged her even more. Hundreds of messages between Michael and Marie, love declarations, intimate photos, and worst of all, conversations where he spoke disrespectfully about Eliza. "My fiancée is too controlling," he had written. "I can't wait for this to be over." "When are you going to leave her?" Marie asked. "After the wedding. I need her to sign some papers first. Then I can divorce her and take half of her companies." Eliza had to run to the bathroom to vomit. Not only was he unfaithful, but he planned to marry her just so he could steal half of her business empire in a divorce. But the message that angered her the most was a recent one. "Don't you feel bad for her?" Marie had asked. "Why should I? Eliza is cold as ice. She never knew what it was like to truly love. I'm doing her a favor." That night, when Michael returned from his business trip, Eliza greeted him with a radiant smile. "My love, I missed you so much." She kissed him passionately, acting like the perfect fiancée. But as she did, in her mind, she was already planning her revenge. During dinner, Michael told her in luxurious detail about his supposed trip to the Bahamas, inventing meetings that never happened and problems that never occurred. He was a pathological liar. "By the way," Eliza said casually, "the company's annual gala is in 2 weeks. Do you have your tux ready?" "Of course." "I wouldn't miss your special night for anything in the world." Eliza smiled sweetly. "It's going to be an unforgettable night." He had no idea how prophetic that statement was. The next few days were a flurry of preparations. Eliza meticulously organized every detail of the gala, but not just the logistical aspects. She was also preparing the stage for the most spectacular fall in the history of American high society. She hired the best audio and video company in the city, supposedly to document the event. She invited all the major news outlets. She made sure Marie was included on the guest list in recognition of her excellent work. Robert delivered the complete dossier to her. Videos, audios, financial documents, photographs. It was enough evidence to sink Michael socially, personally, and professionally. "Are you sure you want to make this public?" Robert asked. "You could resolve this privately." Eliza held the dossier against her chest. "Robert, my reputation, my company, my heart, everything has been damaged by this man, and worst of all, he planned to steal everything I've worked for years. There will be nothing private about this." 3 days before the gala, Eliza received a bouquet of red roses from Michael with a note. "For my future wife, the love of my life." Eliza read the note and, for the first time in weeks, smiled genuinely. She took out her phone and texted Robert. "The show must go on. Everything is ready for the grand finale." The reply came immediately. "Understood. It's going to be epic." Eliza put Michael's note in the same envelope where she had all the evidence of his betrayal. It would be a perfect souvenir of how he had completely underestimated the woman he had decided to mess with. The game was over, and Eliza had won before he even knew they were playing. On the morning of the gala, Eliza woke up with a serenity she hadn't felt in weeks. She had slept soundly for the first time since discovering the betrayal, and she felt refreshed, powerful, and ready for what was to come. Michael was already up and in the penthouse gym, as he was every morning. Eliza watched him from the doorway. He was still a handsome man. She couldn't deny it. But now, instead of admiration, She felt only disgust when she looked at him. "Good morning, my love," he said, wiping sweat from his brow with a towel. "Nervous about tonight?" "Not at all," Eliza smiled. "In fact, I feel more at peace than ever." And it was true. Eliza had spent the last 2 weeks preparing meticulously. Every detail had been planned, every contingency considered. Tonight wouldn't just be a charity gala. It would be Michael Sterling's public trial. Over breakfast, Eliza watched as Michael checked his phone constantly, smiling a secret smile every time he got a message. No doubt he was coordinating with Marie for the night. "Is everything okay?" Eliza asked innocently. "Yeah, just some last-minute details for the hotel in Denver," he lied, without even looking up. Eliza nodded, knowing perfectly well that he was sending romantic messages to his mistress, confirming that after the gala, they would meet at their special place, the apartment he had bought for her with both their money. At 2 p.m., Eliza arrived at the ballroom to supervise the final preparations. The place looked spectacular, decorated with white orchids and soft golden lights, and most importantly, a state-of-the-art audio and video system that would capture every word, every expression, every reaction of the guests. Robert was waiting discreetly near the service entrance. "Everything is ready," he informed her. "The cameras are strategically positioned, the sound system works perfectly, and I have 3 of my best agents mingling among the servers to make sure everything goes according to plan." "And the evidence?" Robert handed her a gold flash drive. "Everything is here. Videos, audios, documents, a complete timeline. It's an airtight case." Eliza put the flash drive in her small evening bag. Tonight, Michael Sterling is going to meet the real Eliza Reyes. At 6 p.m., Eliza began her preparation ritual. She chose a dress that had been specially made for the occasion, a blood-red Valentino that fit her figure like a second skin. It was a color she normally avoided for business events, but tonight she wanted everyone to remember how she looked. Her makeup artist and hairdresser arrived promptly. Eliza had insisted on a dramatic look, intense smoky eyes, lips as red as her dress, and her hair pulled back in an elegant bun that left her shoulders bare. "Ms. Reyes," the makeup artist commented, "you look absolutely stunning, but also different. There's something in your eyes." Eliza looked at herself in the mirror. She was right. Her green eyes shone with an intensity they hadn't had before. It was the look of a woman who had found her power. "It's because I'm finally completely myself," Eliza replied. At 7 p.m., Michael came home to get ready. He was speechless when he saw her. "My God, Eliza, you look breathtaking." "Thank you. You look handsome too." And it was true. Michael in a tux was a sight, tall, elegant, with that smile that had graced magazine covers. But Eliza no longer saw the man she had fallen in love with. Now she saw a consummate actor who had played the role of a lifetime for 3 years. During the ride to the hotel, Michael was particularly affectionate. He held her hand, told her how much he loved her. He talked about how excited he was to marry her in 2 months. "Tonight is going to be special," he told her, kissing her hand. "It feels like the beginning of something completely new for us." Eliza smiled mysteriously. "It is, my love. It definitely is." When they arrived at the hotel, Eliza immediately noticed Marie among the guests. The young woman had chosen a tight silver dress that she definitely hadn't bought with her intern salary. Her jewelry was dazzling, and she had that smug smile of someone who believes they have a delicious secret. "Eliza!" Marie approached with false confidence. "What an incredible event! You look spectacular!" "Thank you, Marie. You also look very good. That dress is beautiful. Your fiancé has very good taste." Eliza watched as Marie's eyes filled with panic for a split second, but the young woman quickly recovered. "Thank you," she mumbled and walked quickly toward the bar. Michael approached from behind. "What were you two talking about?" "Girl talk," Eliza smiled sweetly. "You know how we are with fashion." The next 2 hours passed like any high society gala. Eliza moved among the guests with grace and elegance, raising donations for her foundation, posing for photos, and giving interviews to the media. But all the while, a part of her mind was counting down, waiting for the perfect moment. At 10:15, Eliza went up to the stage to give her annual thank you speech. The room gradually fell silent. All eyes were on the woman in the red dress, who shimmered under the stage lights. "Good evening, everyone," Eliza began, her voice clear and confident. "As we do every year, we're here to support the women entrepreneurs of our country." Polite applause filled the room. Eliza saw Michael in the front row, clapping proudly, with no idea what was about to happen. "For the last 10 years, Eliza continued, Luminous Cosmetics has grown into one of the most successful companies in America. And all this time, I have had the unconditional support of my family, my employees, my partners, and of course my fiancé, Michael Sterling." More applause. Michael smiled widely and winked at her. But tonight, Eliza made a dramatic pause. "I want to talk about something more personal. I want to talk about the importance of honesty, loyalty, and respect in all our relationships, both professional and personal." Something in her tone had changed. The most perceptive guests began to notice that this was not a typical thank you speech. "You see," Eliza continued, walking slowly across the stage, "I recently discovered that some people in my life have not been completely honest with me, and as a businesswoman, as a woman, and as a person, I decided that it's time to face those lies head-on." A murmur began to spread through the ballroom. Eliza saw Michael's brow furrow, clearly confused by the direction the speech was taking. "Alice, what are you doing?" he shouted from his table. Eliza looked directly into his eyes. "I'm doing what I should have done months ago, my love. I'm telling the truth." She pressed the remote control in her hand, and the first image appeared on the giant screens. Michael and Marie kissing passionately in a hotel elevator. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers of shock, the sound of breaking glasses as some guests dropped them in surprise. "Eliza, stop!" Michael ran toward the stage, but Robert's security agent stopped him. "Oh, but we're just getting started." Eliza smiled coldly. "That's just the first of many photos I have to show you." The second image appeared on the screens. Michael and Marie in a luxury jewelry store. He was buying a diamond necklace that cost more than most guests' annual salaries. "As you can see," Eliza continued in a perfectly controlled voice, "my fiancé has been very busy these last few months and very generous too." Marie, who until that moment had been paralyzed at her table, stood up abruptly and ran toward the exit. But the doors to the ballroom had been discreetly closed. Robert had thought of everything. Had thought of, "You can't keep me here!" Marie screamed hysterically. "No one is keeping you," Eliza replied from the stage. "I'm just sharing some family photos with my friends." The third image, Michael signing the purchase papers for Marie's apartment. The fourth, the two of them on a beach in the Bahamas, the weekend he was supposedly on a work trip alone. "Eliza, please, can we talk about this in private?" Michael begged, struggling with the security guards. "In private?" Eliza laughed, but there was no humor in her laugh. "Darling, for 8 months you had the chance to talk to me in private. Instead, you chose to talk in private with my employee." The flashes from the media cameras began to fire non-stop. Eliza had personally invited the most important reporters in the country, and now they knew why. "But the story gets even better," Eliza continued, pressing the remote control again. The screens now showed screenshots of text messages between Michael and Marie. Eliza had carefully selected the most devastating ones. "My fiancé is too controlling. I can't wait for this to be over. After the wedding, I can divorce her and take half of her companies. Eliza is cold as ice. She never knew what it was like to truly love. The ballroom was now in complete chaos. Guests were shouting, some were clapping, others were booing. Reporters were pushing each other to get the best shots. "You're a witch!" Marie screamed from the back of the room. "Michael loves me for real." Eliza turned to her with an icy smile. "Oh, really, honey? He loves you, or are you just convenient?" She pressed the remote control one more time, and the most recent messages appeared on the screen. "When are you going to leave your fiancé?" Marie had asked. "After she signs the papers for the Denver hotel. I need her to transfer that property to our joint accounts first. And then? Then I'll trade you in for a younger model. You're starting to get too demanding." The silence that followed was deafening. Marie gasped, her eyes filling with tears, as she realized she, too, had only been a pawn in Michael's game. "As you can see," Eliza continued, "my dear fiancé didn't just betray me. He also betrayed you, Marie. Apparently, neither of us was more than a tool for his financial plans." Michael had stopped struggling with the guards. He stood in the middle of the ballroom with a completely pale face, his hands trembling. "Eliza," he began in a broken voice. Eliza looked down at him from the stage like a queen looking at a subject. "Is there anything you'd like to say? Any explanation? Any creative excuses?" I can explain." "Oh, please," Eliza clapped sarcastically. "Please, explain to all of American high society how you plan to marry me to steal my company. Explain how you used our joint money to support your mistress. Explain how you lied to me for 8 months while I planned our wedding." Tears began to stream down Michael's cheeks. The man who had always been the image of confidence and control was now crying like a child in front of 300 people and a dozen cameras. "This isn't what it looks like," he mumbled weakly. "No?" Eliza pressed the remote control one last time. The screens now showed financial documents, money transfers, purchases. The detailed plan Michael had developed to access Eliza's assets after the wedding. "These documents were found in your office," Eliza announced. "A complete plan to strip me of Luminous Cosmetics, my properties, everything I've built over 15 years of work." The crowd roared. Some guests began to openly boo Michael. Marie had collapsed into a chair, sobbing hysterically. "Michael Sterling is a thief!" someone shouted from the back. "And a liar!" shouted another. Eliza raised her hand to silence the crowd. "My friends," she said in a clear and strong voice, "tonight we learned a very valuable lesson about the importance of truly knowing the people we decide to associate with, whether in business or in personal life." She took off her engagement ring, a 5-carat diamond that had been on the cover of magazines, and let it fall to the floor of the stage. The metallic sound echoed throughout the ballroom through the sound system. "Therefore," Eliza continued, "I want to officially announce that my engagement to Michael Sterling is over, and I also want to inform you that tomorrow morning my lawyers will be filing a civil lawsuit for fraud, misappropriation of funds, and emotional damages." The applause started slowly from a table in the back and spread like a wave throughout the room. In a matter of seconds, the entire place was on its feet, applauding Eliza. "Bravo!" people shouted. "Well done! You're a queen!" Eliza smiled, a genuine smile this time, and took an elegant bow. "And now," she said when the applause died down, "I hope you can stay for the second part of the night, because despite this unexpected entertainment, we still have a foundation to support and female entrepreneurs to help." She walked off the stage with the grace of a dancer, heading directly toward where Michael was standing. He looked at her with pleading eyes. "Eliza, please, can we fix this?" Eliza stopped in front of him, so close that only he could hear her words. "Michael," she whispered in a voice as soft as silk, "you just learned why you should never underestimate a woman who built an empire from scratch. You thought I was cold as ice. You were wrong. I'm fire and you just got burned. Fire. And you—" She walked away from him as if he were invisible, heading toward her guests who immediately surrounded her with congratulations and support. Michael remained standing in the middle of the ballroom, completely abandoned. Marie had disappeared, likely having found an emergency exit. Reporters swarmed him with questions, camera flashes wouldn't stop, and his humiliation was absolute. He finally managed to push his way to the exit, followed by a throng of reporters and cameramen. His life as he knew it was over. Meanwhile, Eliza continued the party as if nothing had happened. She raised more money that night than at any previous event. Apparently, her revenge spectacle had put everyone in a very good mood to donate. At 2 a.m., when the last guest had left, Eliza found herself alone in the empty ballroom. She took off her heels and sat in a chair, finally allowing herself to process everything that had happened. Robert approached discreetly. "Ms. Reyes, how do you feel?" Eliza smiled, and for the first time in months, she felt completely at peace. "I feel free, Robert. Completely free." Her phone vibrated with a message from her assistant. "The media is calling. CNN, Fox, ABC, everyone wants interviews. What should I tell them?" Eliza wrote back. "Tell them the new Eliza Reyes will be available tomorrow at 10 a.m. and to bring good questions." She stood up, put on her shoes, and walked toward the exit. Tomorrow, a new chapter of her life would begin, a chapter where she would write all the rules. The next day, the headlines of every newspaper in the country were variations of the same theme: the most epic revenge in history. Eliza Reyes, the woman who destroyed her fiancé Liev. The spectacle America will never forget. And indeed, America never forgot. Eliza Reyes became a symbol of female power, of justice, of a woman who refused to be walked all over. Michael Sterling, on the other hand, lost everything. His reputation, his businesses, his hotels were seized to pay legal damages. No one in the business world ever trusted him again. Marie Delgado had to return everything Michael had bought for her and moved back in with her parents in a quiet town in the Midwest, where the gossip followed her for years. And Eliza built an even bigger empire. She wrote a book about her experience that became an international bestseller, and she became the most respected voice on female empowerment in North America. She never remarried. Not because she didn't trust men, but because she had discovered she was completely happy being the absolute owner of her own life. Years later, when asked in an interview if she regretted publicly humiliating Michael, Eliza smiled with that smile that was now famous across the continent. "Regret it?" she laughed. "Honey, that was the best investment I ever made. I spent a fortune on that gala, but what I got in return was priceless. My freedom, my dignity, and the most important lesson of my life. Never allow anyone, absolutely anyone, to underestimate your worth." And with those words, Eliza Reyes forever closed the chapter of her life that had begun with a betrayal and ended with the most epic triumph America had ever witnessed, ever. 5 years later, the queen who rose from her ashes stood in the heart of New York City in September of 2030. The crystal and steel skyscraper that loomed over the city had its name engraved in golden letters at the entrance: Lumiere Towers, Global Headquarters. Eliza Reyes, now 40, stood on the 50th floor of her corporate building, watching the city that stretched at her feet like a tapestry of lights and endless possibilities. 5 years had passed since that night that changed her life forever. 5 years that had transformed not only her personal destiny, but the business landscape of all of North America. Her assistant, Danielle, a brilliant young woman who had replaced Marie and who now managed an operations budget of $50 million a year, entered the office with an excited smile. "Ms. Reyes, Forbes just confirmed. You have officially been named the most powerful woman in America and the 5th most influential in North America." Eliza smiled as she adjusted her ivory Armani blazer. She no longer needed dramatic colors like the blood red of that night of vengeance. Now her power was so evident that she could afford subtle elegance. And the quarterly figures? Luminous Cosmetics reported record earnings of $800 million. Lumiere Real Estate closed 3 more developments in the Hamptons and Aspen. The Lumiere Foundation gave scholarships to more than 500 women entrepreneurs this year. And Lumiere Media? Eliza raised her hand with a smile. "Danielle, breathe. The good news can wait 2 seconds. Lumiere Media had been her most strategic acquisition. After that night at the gala, when all the news outlets covered her epic revenge, Eliza realized the power that narratives held. In 3 years, she had bought 2 magazines, a radio station, and had a stake in a television channel. Now she controlled not only beauty products, but also how stories about female success were told in America. "Any news from our old acquaintances?" Eliza asked with academic curiosity rather than personal interest. Danielle checked her tablet. "Michael Sterling is still bankrupt. His lawyers filed the 3rd appeal, but the courts confirmed that he must pay you $200 million in damages. He currently lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in Queens and works as an insurance agent." Eliza nodded without emotion. The revenge had been satisfying, but now Michael was simply irrelevant to her universe. "And Marie?" Danielle continued. "Marie Delgado married a dentist in Sarasota, Florida. She has 2 children and runs a small boutique. Apparently, she never mentions the years she worked here." Eliza walked to her desk, where the cover of this week's Time magazine rested. Her face took up the entire cover with the headline, "Eliza Reyes, the woman who redefined female power in North America." The real story, however, wasn't just in the business figures or magazine covers. It was in the letters she received daily from women all over the continent. Ms. Reyes, a businesswoman from Texas, had written the week before, "I saw the video of your revenge against your ex-fiancé 5 years ago, and it gave me the courage to leave my abusive husband and start my own company. Today, I have 100 employees, and I wanted to thank you for showing me that women don't have to endure humiliation in silence." There were hundreds of similar letters. Eliza had discovered, without planning to, that her act of personal revenge had become a symbol of empowerment for millions of women. Her phone rang. It was the editor of a national women's magazine who had covered her story from the beginning. "Eliza, honey, do you have 5 minutes? I have a crazy proposal you're going to love." "I'm listening." "Netflix is offering $25 million for the rights, and they want you to be the executive producer." Eliza laughed genuinely. "My life is not a Netflix drama. Are you kidding me?" "Eliza, your story is better than any show. The successful businesswoman who discovers betrayal, plans the perfect revenge, publicly destroys her unfaithful fiancé, and then builds an even bigger empire. It's Shakespeare with a happy ending." Eliza considered the proposal. Not for the money. She already had more than she could spend in several lifetimes. But for the platform it could give her to inspire more women. "Let me think about it." After hanging up, Eliza walked to the panoramic window of her office. The view was spectacular. She could see Midtown, Central Park, the Hudson River, the entire panorama of a city that now recognized her name as a synonym for power and reinvention. Her calendar was full. A meeting with Japanese investors, interested in taking Lumiere to Asia, a masterclass at Stanford, a dinner with the Secretary of the Treasury to discuss policies to support female entrepreneurs. But this afternoon, she had a special appointment. At 4 p.m. sharp, Eliza went down to the 15th floor, where the Lumiere Foundation's Business Training Center for Entrepreneurs operated. There, 25 women between the ages of 20 and 35, all beneficiaries of her scholarships, were waiting for the monthly mentoring session. "Good afternoon, future CEOs," Eliza greeted them as she entered the room. The faces lit up. These women came from low-income neighborhoods and families with no resources. But they all had something in common: a hunger for success and a refusal to accept limitations. Ms. Reyes, a young woman named Patricia, raised her hand. "I've been working on my business plan for a bakery, but the banks don't take me seriously because I have no credit history." "Patricia," Eliza smiled, "do you remember the first rule I taught you?" All the women responded in unison. "If they don't open the door for you, build your own house." Exactly. Who needs traditional banks when we can create our own investment fund? Next month, we're launching Lumiere Capital, specifically to fund businesses founded by women. Applause filled the room. Eliza had discovered that her true passion was not just in building her own success, but in multiplying it through other women. "I have a personal question," another young woman said shyly. "Ms. Reyes, don't you feel lonely? I mean, after what happened with your ex-fiancé, don't you miss having a partner?" It was a question she was often asked in interviews, and Eliza always answered with diplomacy. But with these women, she could be more honest. "Look," she said, sitting on the edge of the desk, "for 3 years, I thought I needed Michael to be complete. I thought a man's love validated my success. But when I discovered his betrayal, I didn't just lose an unfaithful fiancé. I discovered that I had been living a diminished version of myself." She stood up and walked among the students. "Now, when I get up every morning, I don't have to ask anyone what they think about my business decisions. I don't have to pretend to be less intelligent so as not to threaten anyone's ego. I don't have to divide my attention between building my empire and keeping someone who secretly planned to destroy me happy." "But don't you miss companionship?" the young woman insisted. Eliza smiled with genuine warmth. "I have the most satisfying companionship in the world. I have you all, my employees, my business partners, my friends. I have a network of brilliant women who inspire me every day. If a man ever comes along who adds value to this incredible life I've built, he'll be welcome. But I'm no longer looking for someone to complete me because I'm complete all by myself." The students nodded, some furiously taking notes. "Besides," Eliza added with a mischievous smile, "it's very difficult for anyone to impress me after I built a multi-million-dollar empire as an act of revenge." Laughter filled the room. When the session ended, Eliza returned to her office to prepare for that night's event, the inauguration of the 10th luminous boutique in the country, this time in San Francisco. While reviewing her speech, she found an invitation on her desk that made her smile ironically. It was for the wedding of her former friend Sophia, who 5 years earlier had been one of the few people who had suggested that perhaps Eliza had been too hard on Michael. The invitation read, "Sophia and Robert will celebrate their eternal love." Eliza noticed that the Robert in question was Robert Jackson, the private investigator who had been instrumental in her revenge. Apparently, Sophia had met Robert during the interviews after the scandal, and they had fallen in love. Eliza wrote a note on her letterhead. "Dear Sophia and Robert, I wish you all the happiness in the world. Robert, thank you for helping me find the truth 5 years ago. Sophia, I hope you now understand why you can't be too hard on someone who plans to steal your whole life. With love, Eliza. She added, P.S. The wedding gift is being sent directly. A honeymoon at my private resort in the Maldives. At 8 p.m., Eliza was on her private jet to San Francisco. During the flight, she reviewed the monthly reports of her various companies while sipping a glass of French champagne. Luminous Cosmetics had successfully launched its men's line. Lumiere Real Estate had projects in 5 states. The Lumiere Foundation had awarded scholarships to more than 2,000 women. Lumiere Media was producing a documentary about successful female entrepreneurs, but the figures that excited her the most were others. The divorce rate had increased by 23% in America since her public revenge. The number of women consulting lawyers specializing in family law had grown by 40%. The reports of financial abuse had increased by 35%. Eliza had learned through studies she had commissioned that her public act of revenge had inspired thousands of women to leave toxic relationships, investigate their partner's finances, refuse to tolerate infidelity, and value their own economic power more. Without wanting to, a sociologist from UCLA had told her, you started a silent revolution in relationships in America. Women are no longer willing to tolerate what they used to. As the plane landed in San Francisco, Eliza reflected on the path she had traveled. She had started as a successful businesswoman, but she was naive in love. Michael's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been the catalyst for her to discover a version of herself she never knew existed. The Eliza of 5 years ago had been powerful, but she had shared that power, sought validation, and been willing to compromise part of her vision for love. The Eliza of now was a completely autonomous force of nature. The event in San Francisco was a roaring success. More than 500 women lined up to meet her, take photos with her, and thank her for being an example that women could be powerful without apologizing for it. A 17-year-old girl approached shyly. Ms. Reyes, I saw the video of your revenge when I was 12. My mother was in an abusive relationship, and that video gave her the courage to leave. Now she has her own business, and I want to study business administration to be like you. Eliza knelt down to be at the girl's level. What's your name? Valerie. Valerie, I want you to remember something. Don't want to be like me. You want to be the best version of yourself. I'm just a woman who refused to accept less than I deserved. You can do the same, but in your own way. She handed her a business card. When you finish high school, look me up. The Lumiere Foundation needs brilliant minds like yours. Back on the jet, Eliza allowed herself a moment of complete satisfaction. It wasn't just about business success or public recognition. It was because she had achieved something few people did. She had transformed the greatest pain of her life into the fuel for her greatest triumph. Her phone vibrated with a text message from an unknown number. Eliza, it's Michael. I know you have no reason to reply, but I wanted to tell you that I see your achievements in the news and I'm proud of the empire you've built. I know I ruined everything and that I deserve the consequences. I just wanted you to know that I recognize you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too stupid to value you. I hope you're happy. Eliza read the message twice, then deleted it without replying. It wasn't cruelty. It was simply that Michael Sterling belonged to a chapter of her life that was completely over. Replying to him would be like going backward, and Eliza Reyes only looked forward. As the jet sliced through the night sky on its way back to New York, Eliza closed her eyes and smiled. Tomorrow she would have another important meeting, another project to launch, another woman to inspire. But tonight, 40,000 feet in the air, she simply allowed herself to feel gratitude for the woman she had become. A queen who had built her own kingdom. A businesswoman who had redefined female power. A woman who had shown that the best revenge isn't to hurt the one who hurt you, but to become so successful that their betrayal becomes irrelevant. Eliza Reyes was no longer the woman who had stepped onto a stage in a blood-red dress 5 years ago. She was something much more powerful. She was a living legend. And her story was just beginning. If you found Eliza's journey from betrayal to triumph as captivating as I did, hit that like button to show your support. What do you think was the most shocking part of Michael's betrayal? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more stories of powerful women who have changed the world.